Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the second episode of The Digital Difference. We are a podcast for IT leaders and those interested in all things about digital products, where we discuss ideas, news, and fresh perspectives about the web, apps, and emerging technologies. I'm Scott Gulliver, your co-host, and my other co-host, handover, is Auburn Hampton.
Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about virtual reality. Come on! You're
bringing some energy today. Yeah, I like that.
That's
good.
I'm the hype man, mate. That's all I'm about.
It's good. And VR, right? It seems to be everywhere at the moment. At least
we love
in our
it,
world.
mate. We
do, don't we?
Love it. Yeah, we play golf, table tennis. I beat Scott every single game. He's not very good. And the skills transfer, don't they? They transfer onto a real ping pong table.
They do. I thrash you more times in the real world, though. So
yeah, I don't know about that, mate. Don't know about that.
So VR, virtual reality. Like we said, it seems to be everywhere at the moment. We're really using virtual reality in our company to make a difference to how we work and interact with each other day to day. But today's episode is about much more than that. It's about the wide variety of things you can do with VR these days, bringing some of our perspective onto that and some of our research that we've done into the area as well. Because actually, I think VR is a really interesting thing for businesses to think about at the moment, isn't it? We get shown it a lot as consumers these days. There are headsets we can buy, there are games we can play, but there's a lot of applications for the business world as well.
It is exciting for businesses, yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, maybe let's dive together into why it's exciting for businesses, okay? VR, I mean, it's been around for a while. I think it's come to the forefront lately, but VR has been around for a long time now. Having a look at kind of the research we've done, 2019 was the year that Forbes reckoned was the year that VR got real. And I think certainly since then, over the past couple of years, we're starting to see more VR being pushed to consumers. And certainly, you know, with things like Mark Zuckerberg looking at the kind of the outset of what VR and the Metaverse might be in the future, there's certainly a lot of thinking about what that vision might bring in the future now, I think. I mean, what are your thoughts around the kind of stuff that Mark Zuckerberg specifically has envisioned for the future, Owen?
I don't know what he's envisioned for the future. What has he envisioned?
Well, it was, I think, last year, wasn't it, that he came out with his big in the kind of Facebook conference where they announced the kind of vision of what the metaverse might be. It was a grand vision, I think, to put it lightly. He mentioned that, you know, this was looking at 10 years in the future. It was a long way away. But I think it did a lot to unlock what the art of the possible might be in the future. And it's really taken it now from just us playing games in VR to actually what will life look like when this stuff becomes really prevalent? Like what happens when we all use VR headsets day to day?
Like you said there, VR, it isn't just for games. So like companies are using it now for, like, I don't know, like a mechanic. Rather than like training a mechanic and letting them mess up an actual car, chuck them on VR. You've got all your wrenches and socket wrenches and what other tools exist, mate. I don't really know. I'm not a handyman. Yeah, rather than spending time and money on training, chuck them in VR and then it's free. And like I was saying earlier, things do transfer to the real world with my table tennis skills.
They do, don't they? It's surprising how you pick up those kind of like motor skills just from and beyond the motor skills, obviously, like you say, knowing which tools to use for what job, and once things get simulated really well, they do translate neatly to the real world as well. And I think there's a large training element that we'll hopefully dive into in a little bit that is a really interesting application right now for VR, and it's one of many, but as you've said, for kind of things that either are really high risk or high cost to do and train on in real life, there's definitely a use case for VR there to be just something that they can use or people can use to train without the risk involved, which is really interesting, I think.
So when people talk about VR, they're also saying AR. Now, augmented reality, that's it, isn't it? That's what AR is.
Yeah.
So the way I like perceive it is AR basically like interacting with your real life environment, but through virtual reality. So,
yeah,
for example,
I think that sums up nicely.
Yeah, so there's that game on the Quest 2 where you're in pass-through mode. For those who don't know, pass-through mode is you've got little cameras on the headset. In fact, this one here. For those who are watching and not listening, these little things here are cameras. These little
kind of on the outside of the headset, aren't they?
Yeah, so you can see what's in front of you. And then there's this game. What's it called? It's the one where there's like an obstacle course, and you have to jump over bridges and block swinging axes and stuff. I can't think of what it's called, but yeah, that's a good example of AR, isn't it? Or VR with AR.
Yeah,
I'll let you take the stage.
I think AR really is just VR, but mixing in the real world. Is that literally augmenting real world with other things, and yeah, like you say, that there's various apps. I mean, Stargaze is the other one that we've looked at before, isn't it? Where you can kind of draw your roof in the headset.
God,
and
why
you can
didn't
see
I?
your real...
Why didn't I talk about that one? Because I've written an entire blog on that. Why did that not spring to mind? Why am I talking about things I don't even know the name of? Stargaze. Stargaze.
You explain it. You've looked into it more than I have. You explain what it's about.
Yeah, so Stargaze, it's pretty cool. You like pinpoint the corners of your room, and like you point at it with the controller, and then you choose the corners of the room, and then you can literally at a touch of a button. Like, this is in pass-through mode, by the way, and the touch of a button, like, your roof sort of rolls in, like you know those shutters, like, rolls open like that, and, like, you can see, like, what stars are above you, like, right now, like, through tracking and that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
I've
written a blog on it. If people want to look at the blog, I've also done a little video on it.
Yeah, it's cool to see it in action, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think augmented reality is really where a lot of the virtual reality started in many ways. We're kind of coming full circle in the way that AR is becoming even more of a big focus now. But if you think about things like Google Glass, where that entire project was to get a little heads-up display, you know, in your vision, and it would kind of display things to you on a real-time basis. Then you move into things like with phones you can do these days, can't you? Where I think it's in Google Maps or something, where you can point your kind of camera up in the app, and you can see real world like turn directions overlaid on the kind of camera, so you can see pointing down the street, and you can see which street you need to go into. And I think the vision for a lot of that is that in the future there will be. We will have devices on us at all times, much like a headset or something similar, or something like Google Glass, which is not so intrusive as a headset. And you'll be able to see, you know, things like real-time turn directions. You'll be able to see information about how busy something is just based on looking at the door, you know, opening times, all these sorts of things. Really cool use cases for how augmented reality will help the day-to-day world. And then there's much of VR at the moment, which is about immersing you in another environment, is starting to cross over with the real world, like the Stargaze app, where you're literally looking at the skies above you, but in your kind of real room that you're in as well. So there's a real kind of blurred line between the two, and some really interesting use cases for it, I think.
Yeah, is the Google Glass still going? I haven't seen much from that for a while.
I don't think so. No, I think they stopped that project. It was always intended to be a little bit of a experiment, I think, or a kind of tech demo, but it was, in many ways, it was a bit ahead of its time as well, in the fact that
big time,
people just weren't ready to see people walking around with, you know, little heads-up displays on their faces at all times. There was a lot of controversy around it at the time, wasn't there?
See, but that's the way it's sort of aiming now with the VR. Like they've had the big headsets, and now they're sort of shrinking them slowly to try and get to that just glassy sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, who knows, in the future we might be wearing contacts that just go over our eyes with little chips in them. Yeah, there's lots of scope for some really cool stuff as the tech starts to shrink. And I think we're already seeing big moves in that way. I mean, Facebook, for all of their criticism, they've really, or Meta now, the parent company, have really poured a lot of energy into really moving the kind of VR space forward, I think, in my opinion, over the past few years.
I think I read earlier he's invested $10 billion so far.
Yeah, really, really pushing things forward. And there's obviously lots of other companies as well doing really innovative stuff. But I think the Quest 2 headset specifically has been really impactful in just getting VR into the mainstream. I think it was it last Christmas that the Oculus app was like the most downloaded on that day in the app stores.
Yeah.
And yeah, just getting it into the hands of people. And that's a real challenge, isn't it? Because as much as the tech can continue to progress, we need people to be using the technology, feeding back, learning what people like, what they don't like, and also contributing to that ecosystem as well for it to continue. So,
yeah. Whitney selling the Quest 2 at a loss just to get it into the hands of the consumers.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the headset is even with the loss of the hardware cost, I would imagine they made a lot of money back through the in-app sales as well. So yeah, every app, it's just like a phone app store, isn't it? You still need to purchase the apps through their ecosystem. But yeah, again, I think it's commendable what they've done just to push things forward and keep pushing that space. So another term you mentioned, AR. Another term that is quite often used with VR is the metaverse, isn't it? What's your understanding of the metaverse?
Well, we've recently watched that Ready Player One, haven't we? So the way
great film.
It's a good film, by the way. I've never watched it until this year, but it's a very good film. So the way when I think of metaverse, I think of like someone living in VR, like they have their own house. They customize their own house. They could do whatever they want inside of VR. They can watch TV in VR. They can walk down the street in VR. Obviously, it's not exactly helping them in real life, but in VR. Is that it? Like you buy like virtual retail in VR and currency? Is this where crypto comes in and all that bollocks?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's I think that's certainly the vision that a lot of people imagine when they think of metaverse. I think there's probably steps in between those. So a lot of the apps that we can access these days through the headsets, the kind of ones that come to mind are things like Horizons that Facebook have built, which is a kind of almost a sandbox environment where you can build environments, others can go and visit, and you can interact with each other socially in there as well. Is a metaverse in today's world? It's certainly not something you'd probably spend your entire day in, but you can still be in that environment, spend time with other people, interact with it much in the same way as you would the real world. And another app that we use for our day-to-day work occasionally is an app called Immersed. And again, in many ways, that's another metaverse. It's a place where real people go to hang out with each other and interact with the kind of virtual environment. So I think metaverse
it isn't like one app. It's just like the act of going into a virtual universe and like living your life. Is that it? Am I?
Kind of, yeah. In many ways, I think that the definition of metaverse is going to change as we go forward. I think that a lot of people have in their head that metaverse is that single place, and I think that's right. Yeah. I think that's kind of what we mean by metaverse as a term. But as of today, I think there's still a lot of metaverse type experiences you can get. It's just all fairly disjointed. And that's part of the problem. When you look at something like Ready Player One and that vision that was imagined all those years ago, it was this, you put on a headset and you can jump anywhere. And I think in many ways, that whole thing of being able to take your character in VR, to take the things that you own, so your digital products and assets, and move them from different experiences. As we start to kind of blend the landscape, that's going to become what we see as the metaverse. But today it's all very fragmented. You need to go into one. You can't take things from one into another. It's not very transferable. So with all of the VR stuff, we've already mentioned that consumers are currently getting a lot out of it. We saw, as we said, that big spike on in Christmas towards the purchase of headsets. Clearly a lot of people are enjoying it for their kind of leisure time. Why should companies care? I think that's the question that a lot of certainly bigger companies are asking at the moment, but I think it applies to smaller ones as well, especially those who want to start thinking about being more innovative and potentially breaking into something that's really kind of bleeding edge at the moment.
I mean, they're making like a lot of money, like games developers, they're making a lot of money. Like if you go on the App Store, the games aren't cheap. They really aren't cheap. And considering graphic wise and maybe effort wise to make, it's like a mobile app, like a mobile game app. So I'd say people are overcharging, like development companies are overcharging for the games. So they're just making a shitload of money off it. So that's one reason why they should care, because that's where the money's at. And as it progresses, as things get smaller, the technology gets smaller, and it's even more widely used, they're just going to make even more money from it.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, businesses would care ultimately because they're going to make money from it, right? That has to be the reason why they would be interested. But as you said, there are a lot of people using things at the moment. I actually think that there's not a great. It's a very early space, isn't it, in terms of the ecosystem? So there's a lot of opportunity for people to be in this early stage, developing experiences, products that nobody's seen before in VR. And I think there's kind of two main threads really at the moment that are going to be really useful for companies to start looking at. One is the interaction that VR brings. So the ability to have people, potentially users or customers or people that might care about your brand, interacting with either you or something that you do. So, Orban, you mentioned already that kind of training aspect, but there may be interesting opportunities, for example, for people to interact with your brand and your company through VR. Whether it be through a kind of customer service layer, but also just generally just any interaction that you can think of. If you can leverage some of that.
Sorry to cut in, mate. When we were looking for houses back in 2020, I feel like you can't go anywhere. You can't go on any podcast without people bringing up COVID. But during COVID, they had the virtual walkthroughs of the houses because they weren't doing in-meeting walkthroughs.
Yeah.
So, I think that's another.
It's a great example of interaction, isn't it? Where you can use VR to enhance that interaction with a company or a problem that you're trying to solve. And then the other opportunity I think that's starting to become more and more, especially with these metaverse type applications, is the kind of marketing, ads, product type angle. So literally just as you would in the real world, selling either marketing or advertisements through, you can start to do that through these bigger ecosystems that are being built in VR. It's probably hard to bet on exactly which ones are worth it right now. And I think advertising is a really touchy point because I think there is this concern by consumers that we're going to enter a world which is just so. We get it in the real world already to a certain degree with billboards, but can you imagine that 10 times with VR where you just have billboards everywhere?
Yeah.
And I think that is a concern, but I think there's ways potentially to do it in a really helpful way to consumers. So again, it might not be through direct marketing to them, but it might be through a kind of marketing side product or something that actually helps your end users. But using VR again, just as a platform to be able to get your message and your brand out there. So we've covered a little bit about why companies might care. And I think we touched on this already, Orban, but I think there are a few kind of top level threads of where VR might be impactful to a business. I think broadly those are VR for experiences, for learning, for building communities, and for work as well, potentially. So VR for experiences then. This, I think, is where VR really shines. It's not until you put on a headset and dive into a virtual world that's really far away from what we live in day to day. It's amazing, isn't it, Orban, to have that experience, whether it's in a game or an app or whatever it is, and just be dropped in and interact with an environment that's so unlike what we do day to day.
Yeah, exactly. So with VR experiences, I was thinking it could also help like medically. For example, like say you've got like severe agoraphobia. I know people who are agoraphobic and they struggle to leave the house and to socialize like sometimes. Mm-hmm. But chucking on a headset and going into the metaverse, if you're not watching, I did air quotes because we don't really know what the metaverse is fully. But going in there and interacting through, it's sort of like it's similar to the real world, so it sort of helps to build the social confidence in there.
No, I think you're absolutely right. There's definitely applications for people to experience things that they wouldn't normally do, like say for medical reasons, or maybe actually anything else as well. I mean, I think we think of experiences in VR sometimes as these fantasy worlds, but there's no reason why you couldn't take an experience that a typical person might not experience and be able to put them in it. So whether it's something, I mean, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but putting them in.
Well, I'm never going to fly a plane. I haven't got a private pilot license like you. Well, not there, but I can in VR. Like all the procedures of flying a plane, it's the same. in VR as it is in real life. Obviously, it's a lot harder in real life, but yeah, I'm never going to fly a plane, but I can in VR.
Yeah, and enabling people to experience that sort of thing, whether it's, like you say, something like flying a plane, or whether it's being able to go into a room of people and just socialize with actual people around the world, or whether it's a step in between and being in an environment that helps them learn how to socialize with bots or something like that. That sounds kind of creepy, but you know, building up those skills in those environments just from being in experiences, I think can be really cool. And companies are so unique that they have their own unique ways of doing things, their own unique products, that there's thousands of different applications that people can think about when they want to craft something for VR. I mean, you mentioned flying a plane. That probably leads us neatly into the second one, which is learning. And we've covered on this. And I think this is really where a lot of the learning focused companies can probably quite easily leverage VR to really up their game in terms of what they deliver as training material. I mean, it really is hands-on training, isn't it? For the most part, it really is like experiential learning, which is really hard to replicate in courses or more kind of handbook type stuff. With VR then, another big thread is communities. And I think this is really a big focus of the metaverse, isn't it? Is getting people together. Because of course, we're all fairly remote these days. And even if we aren't, we're all limited by our physical locations. And I mean, you do a lot of gaming, don't you, Auburn, where you're speaking to people all around the world in the games you play. And VR, I guess, takes that to the next level, doesn't it? Where you can virtually see people, interact with them with kind of gestures, not just voice, but actually gestures. And in the future, things like facial gestures and things like that. So what do you think about how that might help community building in the future, or just finding people around the world that have the same sort of things as you do?
Well, there's like events that take place on I don't know what app it is. What is it? Is it the?
I think it is the Horizons platform.
The Horizons, they have like talks and even concerts. They've had concerts on there. Another thing is big screen? Big screen?
Yeah.
It's basically like a virtual theatre, and there's like people can just go in and watch films. I don't know if it's legal. Is it legal? Is that a bit of piracy involved there?
I don't know how they're doing it through there, but I mean, the app is certainly legal. But
if people just come together and watch the favourite films, like they aren't new films. There's old films in there. It just brings people together.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. It does bring people together. And again, in terms of like thinking about how a business might utilize that, I think a lot of brands these days are leaning towards more community-based audiences. So whether it's the company being at the forefront of a subject they're in, much like we do here with our local developer meetup, it's just good for us to be part of that. And
shout out Swindon Software. If you're interested in tech and you're in the Swindon/Wiltshire area, we do a little meetup every 2 months. It's all right. Free pizza, free drink, good speakers. Scott,
you're really a promotional man, aren't you?
I am. Yeah, I see it, and I just need to jump on it, mate.
Fair enough. I think VR just takes that to the next level. It really removes the boundary of having to be in a location. And now that people are much more used to remote meetings, I think that people are much more likely to be used to that type of environment. Obviously, they need the headsets. That's going to be the next thing. But as that continues to be less of a boundary for people, and there are more and more price options, I think that we'll start to see more of these communities being built over time.
So you said earlier about how we use VR in our lives, like for work and that. Care to elaborate on that, Scott?
Yeah, I think this could be a future podcast in itself, because I think that VR for work is a really, really interesting concept, and we've been utilising it, haven't we, Auburn, with our company. So I'm based in Swindon. Auburn, you're based in Stoke-on-Trent, which is...
As you could tell by the lovely accent, hello.
Robbie
Williams,
it's a drive, isn't
Oatcakes, Josiah Wedgwood. What else has Stoke got? Eddie Hall. Sorry,
Eddie Hall.
I mean, he's Newcastle.
Is he from Stoke? Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Pretty much.
I'll let you take that one.
It? Yeah. We're claiming Eddie Hall. Stoke City, of course. Cold Wet Tuesday night, Stoke City. Right, sorry, carry on. We're getting off topic here. Virtual reality.
we are a ways apart, aren't we? We can't commute to each other daily, and we always intended to be a remote first company, as many companies are these days. However, there are some drawbacks to remote that I think a lot of companies are still working out. A lot of benefits to it, and some of the drawbacks. And we have plugged the gap quite successfully using VR. So we certainly work pretty traditionally remotely for most of the time, but we do occasionally jump into virtual reality. I mentioned it before, but in an app called Immersed, which is it's essentially a virtual kind of workroom, isn't it? It's a virtual office, really, where you can. It brings in your physical laptop as well, so you can see your keyboard, your screen. You can have up to however many virtual screens as well. And I've written about this countless times on LinkedIn and various other platforms.
Yeah, we have.
I think it's a really great application for VR, because beyond just gaming, this is a really interesting use case for productivity. And Immersed, one of the things they mentioned way back, which I really resonated with, was that they intend to provide kind of a noise-free environment for doing work. And what they mean by that is, much like you would put on noise-cancelling headphones to block out audio noise from your real world, they essentially block out all of the visual distractions as well that we have in the real world.
Shit.
Yeah, it's deep, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the hope then is that because you've got such a focused environment, you really are more productive.
God,
and of course, then there's the benefits of having.
Mic, then. You just like punched the mic so hard. I hear that booming, man. God, the passion.
Well, this is it. Yeah, and there's the productivity element. There is the ability for you and I, Orban, to be in the same virtual room and look at each other, work together like we would in the real world.
It feels very different from us being on just video camera, talk to talk. It feels like I'm on video chat with someone who's 100 plus miles away. But in virtual, in Immersed, I'm sat on a sofa, you're sat on a chair. We've got the snowy scene outside.
Yeah,
we've got the fire roaring, and it's like it's like you're right there. It's actually you.
Yeah,
I mean, it helps that your immersed character has got like Sonic the Hedgehog hair, like you have in real life.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's a lot more immersive.
It is.
It's called
they
Immerse.
picked a good name, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. They really did.
And there are other apps out there for it. From what we found, Immersed is really great at hitting all of these points. But there's definitely something to being in the same virtual room over just being on a video call with each other. And we've tried lots of things, haven't we? We've tried all-day video calls to kind of to facilitate being in the same room.
Virtual office, which is just another video call but smaller.
Yeah, and they work for
around.
most things, but then there's an extra layer that VR gives you. And I think as the headsets become easier to use, especially for all-day use, and obviously I think Meta's coming out with a new one soon, aren't they? Potentially this month, which I think is promising to be a bit more work-focused. So maybe that will be much more aligned to that use case. But as the headsets become easier to use all day, as the price points come down, I think we're potentially going to see a really useful opportunity for companies to have their workforce remote and bring a lot of the benefits that you would get from being in the same place as well. So really cool stuff there, isn't there? Really cool advances. We're very early days for VR at the moment as well. This is the thing, we're really at the very outset of what's going to be possible. My opinion is that the visions that are being imagined these days by the bigger companies, although they seem out there, my hope is that the best parts of those will go forward and really start to bring everyone together. But it needs people to interact with it and use it, doesn't it? Because we need people to feed back into this. We need us as consumers to figure out what we like, what we don't like, what's unacceptable for a virtual world, and not have it all run by the big corporates and companies. And the more smaller companies and day-to-day companies can input into that mix as well, I think the better, hopefully. Cool. Well, so to wrap this one up, as always, we're really starting out on this thing quite early. Please share it with anyone that you think might like it. That would really help us. If you can, give us a rating on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called these days, and subscribe to us to get the next episodes. We're trying to do these between every 2 weeks to a month. We'll have the next one out very soon with another useful and interesting topic, we hope. Thanks so much for spending time with us today. Thanks from me, and
thank you very much, everyone. God bless. Merry Christmas.
There you go. Cool. We'll see you in the next one, guys.
Bye.